So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Heather Wood and I'm the IEST Meetings and Education Program Coordinator. So for today, feel free, if you are able to share your webcam. We'd love to see you. It's been a while since we've seen everyone, whether you're in person or whatnot. So feel free to share your webcam. I'm going to just go ahead and introduce our moderator for today. So Morgan Pullen is going to be our moderator, and he is the principal consultant for MicroRite. He brings over 30 years experience working in clean rooms and is a subject matter expert in particle monitoring. And he's been involved with various clean room projects ranging, working in over 40 countries with hands-on experience in clean room design, construction, validation, monitoring, program development, particle county design, and product management of clean room related products and systems. So before we introduce our other panelists today, I'd love for you guys to go ahead and introduce yourselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to call on your name, and please go ahead and unmute. The unmute button is going to be located in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen, and let us know your name, company, and maybe why you decided to join us on this webinar today. And before I do that, also, I want to let everyone know, if you have any questions, comments, just unmute yourself. You don't need to worry about using the chat box unless you don't have a microphone. Just go ahead and join the conversation. It is a very casual webinar environment. So first off, I'm going to have Arlene. You can go ahead and introduce yourself. Go ahead. She's having. Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Hi. Sorry, my connection's
we can hear
pretty
you.
bad. But hi, I'm Arlene Lawrence. I'm a manager at Wuxi AppTech. I manage the custom studies and environmental monitoring departments here.
All right. Next, Hassim.
Hey, Heather, this is Jim. I'm back. Sorry about that. I tried the app and it just doesn't work that well on the phone.
That's okay. That's okay. Go ahead, Hassim.
Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Hashim from Lighthouse Worldwide Solutions. Today I'm here because I want to learn more about what's waiting for us in our next one, especially the subject matter experts' opinion on ongoing revision process and how they're seeing the monitoring versus classification, especially on the particle monitoring systems.
Next, Jay Postlethwaite.
Yes, I'm Jay Postlethwaite. I work for TechSwipe, and I've been in the clean rooms for about 11 years. And I'm interested to see what other people's opinions are on the regulators' thinking in Annex 1 changes.
All right, Jay Valentine.
Good afternoon. This is Jay Valentine. I'm an area sales manager for Violator Professional. And I guess I'm interested, as we all are, in the impacts and how it's going to affect what we do in our day-to-day.
All right, thanks. Keith Flasick.
Hello, this is Keith from Steris Corporation. I'd like to get the latest updates from the EU. Here.
All right, Leo. There you are. Can't hear you though. I can see you. It's okay.
Little button that looks like a microphone, Leo.
It's if you go to the bottom of your screen and by the mute button, there's a little arrow, and sometimes you need to switch where you're getting the audio from. Just to let you know. Any luck? No, that's all right. We'll figure it out, but that's where you would probably need to change where it's coming from. And then someone else say something?
Yeah, you got it.
I think we're good.
You guys can hear me?
Yes.
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 Hey,
Yeah.
good. I changed to my, for some reason, my laptop microphone is not coming up, but my monitor microphone coming up. That's good. Good to see everybody. Leo Gubanko. I'm with Valeda Professional. I'm the global group technical manager. Been here for almost 12 years now. Time flies. Yeah, the same deal. I mean, obviously a lot of things going on with the latest revision of Annex 1, and we're certainly looking at it, and it's you know, a lot of eyes are on it. So I'm just wondering how our other colleagues are doing and dealing with some of the changes.
All right, thank you. Morgan, you can go ahead and introduce Dave and Jim, and we can just go ahead and take it away.
Excellent. So I'd like to introduce Jim Pollerain. Jim, you want to talk a little bit about yourself? I don't have your bio in front of me.
Is he there? Jim?
Or Dave?
Hey, this is Jim Pollerain. I'm a senior technical service manager at Steris, and I've been a part of IEST as technical coordinator for several years. It's a pleasure to work with the group, and I have a lot of interest in one because it's going to affect a lot of the industry here.
Excellent. Dave?
Sure. My name is Dave Nobley. I'm the Technical Services Group Manager for Contact Incorporated, manufacturer of swabs and wipers and mopping systems and disinfectants. And I am the current Technical Vice President of the Contamination Control Division of the IEST. And yeah, well, Jim and Morgan and I are here to kind of lead or nurture along a discussion about Annex 1. So it is on a lot of people's minds. There's been so much in the marketplace over the past couple of years about Annex 1, the revision, and all these changes. So yeah, I think it's important to talk about what's coming and how it might affect everyone.
So with that, you know, what is Annex 1? Talking a little bit about it. GMP Annex 1, it's important to understand it's not strictly a European document. It's part of the Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme as well. It becomes the, you know, often I like to refer to it as GMP Annex 1, not EU Annex 1, based upon participation in countries and things like that. What does it mean to us in the US, people in the US? Should we be looking at that? And if you're producing medical products, not just pharmaceuticals, but medical products, including medical devices, to PICS member nations, this is a very, it is the guidance document considered CGMP. Important to understand that that Annex 1 was published. The current version was published in 2008, and it's been under review for quite some time. We've been talking about it. Those of you who are aware of different revisions, different drafts. The last draft was in 2020, version 12, and that represents a draft. But in addition to that, between 2008 and the different draft documents, there have been a clarification document from PICS, from Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme, related to different aspects of it, which is an important reference for us. And if you need to know where that is, we can share how you can get a look at that. So in terms of talking about the draft, particularly the draft, what does the draft mean to us? And in my takeaway, in my view, and companies I deal with, the draft represents the latest regulatory thinking. It represents where international inspectors are going with it. So it's an important document that we should be looking at and I think preparing for, and in some cases maybe even start implementing some of these things, such as a contamination control strategy and those type of things. I don't know if Dave or Jim, you want to add to that? Or
well, I think the kind of the first blush question is, right, yeah, this was a well, Annex 1 is first and foremost a UDRELEX chapter, and you have to ask yourself, you know, especially in North America, does it apply to me? Should I care, right? Do I need to pay attention? And I think for many companies the answer is yes. For a good number of companies the answer might be no. But I think, and we had a brief chat before we came live. I think the thing to keep in mind is anything that provides guidance and is scientifically based in contamination control is worth paying attention to, whether you're regulatorily bound by it or not. There's some really good information both in Annex 1 and in the upcoming draft that I think is very useful.
Absolutely.
And Morgan, this is Jim. I totally agree with you. I think it is something that a lot of pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device companies are going to be following because PICS is going to recognize it. It's going to be something that regulators will be looking to for guidance, and especially in Europe. So, and it has been in revision for a long time because currently they're on draft number 13, and my understanding is they're expecting to put out the final version sometime in March. So it's been a long time coming, but I think there's a lot of very useful, insightful updates in it that will impact a lot of the industry. And as you said, Morgan, that contamination control strategy is a big key element that is going to be pushed out.
Absolutely. And, one thing and there's things that are obviously every document has certain weaknesses. No such thing as a perfect document or perfect standard. That said, in the spirit of contamination control, contamination control isn't, it's more than simply meeting your limits. It's about establishing control. And we have to establish control at multiple levels, from the physical level, also from the data collection and manipulation levels as well, which makes it a very, very important document for us. Also, from the U.S. standpoint, the U.S. FDA is a member of PICS and participates in the creation, editing, or viewing of this document. And the other thing, a part of the Pharmaceutical Inspection Cooperation Scheme, inspectors will be sharing information, also training, cross-training between inspectors from the U.S. FDA with other organizations. So if you get inspected, say, by someone out of, say, Germany at your facility, what the inspectors find in your facility may be available to your home country's inspectors as well, which means they may follow up on that. And it's the point in terms of harmonization, in terms of GMP harmonization, in terms of inspector harmonization, and those type of things. So that's why I think it's so important.
Yeah, and I think we'd be a little bit remiss, and I mentioned this and I forwarded this to Jim and Morgan earlier. There are, as Morgan and Jim pointed out, right, there's 12 drafts prior. They're working on draft 13. And there have been, over the past few years, I mean, so much information, so many webinars, so many people talking about Annex 1 and what's coming, what to expect, and how to deal with it. And I think it's important to note that the EMA, the European Medicines Agency, last week issued a letter basically warning people essentially to ignore anything that is not officially provided by the EMA, right? Especially regarding the drafts. So a lot of people have been taking these draft documents, reading them, and then putting forth their interpretations on guidance. And, this is kind of what's coming. This is how you can be prepared for it. And the EMA finally came out and said, look, don't pay any attention to all of this other chatter. The only thing that matters is what is officially provided by the EMA. Draft 12 certainly is. So I think what they're saying is, stay tuned, because we're at the final stages of this revision, and I think they're just cautioning people to not jump the gun in terms of looking at the draft and reading too much into that until the final revision is produced, which I think is prudent. At the same time, I think it's foolhardy to think that all the effort that went into this draft 12 and the pending draft 13, all the input from the thousands of stakeholders that have commented on it over the years, there's a certain momentum, there's certain things within the draft 12 that are likely to carry through, right? And I think that's something we can certainly rely on as well. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there that the EME is cognizant of so much that's going on that may not be official information.
Right. And just on another point, there are foreign inspectors that are basically going out and using the draft in some instances to point out, mistakes. Whether that holds water or follows through. Here in the U.S., we've had U.S. inspectors go in and make companies make some changes. And some of the changes that they've made actually are in the draft, but actually are well backed up within the current version. So it's important to understand, the 2008 version is the current version, and that is what you have to build to. However, build to or plan for. But that said, if you're doing a new building, you're doing an upgrade, anything like that, a new filling line, those type of things, it would be foolish not to consider the draft version in terms of, particularly stuff that, can be difficult to change later on.
Right.
So anybody want to talk about or share or ask any questions? I mean, what do you guys see in your different facilities or areas? Okay. Is anybody currently running into any issues or any resistance or any problems? What do you guys see? This is meant to be a discussion, so they're informal. So,
Asim, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
So I have a couple of concerns. I don't know if all the subject matter experts are sharing the same. I want to hear from you, because nowadays, after, especially in 2015, when the ISO revised and come up with non-5 micron in ISO class 5 environment, most of the pharmaceutical companies are reading this as 5 micron is no more important for our monitoring systems. So what we saw from the draft is
Hasim, it's hard to hear you. Your audio is a little bit.
Okay, how is it now?
I think a little better.
Is it okay now? Okay. So the main issue here with the GMP and ISO, the ISO, this solves the 5 micron in ISO class 5. Most of the pharmaceutical companies here in the Europe, they are reading this as 5 micron is no more important for us. However, luckily we are seeing it on the new draft of GMP and making 2 separate tables for classification and monitoring, while 5 micron is still exists in the monitoring side. We all know that this 5 micron is a very important indicator for the early HVAC system failures. Plus, the GMP is now coming with this 2 separate table, may guide all pharmaceutical companies to have 5 microns on their contamination control strategies. My question for all subject matter experts here, how the US will respond to this, because GMP is technically a European guideline, and the ISO is already removed these 5 microns. So if someone is not dealing with the European market, will they leave 5 micron or will they continue? What will be the response?
That's a really good point and an important point. So the US FDA, and I've asked this of the US FDA, senior management actually, regarding 5 micron. And officially the US FDA does not require 5 micron reporting for classification or monitoring. It's not in the US Sterile Septic Guidance 2004. And it's that said, and this is problematic. And I don't wish to editorialize this, but to back up what Asim is saying, in the role of contamination control, now it's in contamination control, our job isn't simply to meet what's in the table for ISO. Our job is to control contamination and to establish control. And as a person who's a subject matter expert in particle counting, I will tell you this. Submicron particles, particles less than 1 micron, behave significantly different than particles greater than 5 micron. And as Asim said, in terms of HVAC control, additionally, 5 micron particles represent the size of particles that we can expect from human-generated contamination. I have personal experience seeing that. In addition to that, the breakdown of garments. I've seen facilities, laundered garments, laundered sterile garments that shed fibers and things like that because they've been washed or sterilized so often they start to break down. I was at a facility, a contract manufacturing company, about a month ago, and they had garments that had been laundered by the same cleaner and laundry, one of these, U.S. great clean and laundries that had been in circulation for more than 20 years. And on inspection, we found those garments to be shedding, and we could actually shake laundered garments and see fibers coming out of them. And this is something you wouldn't see, and the argument that a lot of people like to make and that the US FDA tries to make is that, well, we'll see that stuff in the 0.5 micron channel. But you have to be able to differentiate that. And our goal in the 21st century, again, this is now I'm gonna share my opinion and you could take it for a grain of salt, but in the 21st century, we should be utilizing all the available tools that we can in order to control contamination. People shed contaminants, obviously, and there's a difference between viable and non-viable monitoring, but it's really important to understand that all methodologies that we use for viable sampling don't detect or don't capture or recover all the organisms. So people will say, well, Morgan, why are you so intense on 5 micron particles? Not every 5 micron particle is an organism. You're absolutely true, but every 5 micron particle is still a particle. And there's 3 contaminants that are listed in international GMP, including the US, that we care about: microbial contamination, particulate contamination, endotoxins. So yeah, this is why monitoring this and looking at this is such an important aspect. And this tends to, get a lot of companies, in the US, people have said and companies have said, well, I don't have to care about 5 micron particles. I have plenty of instances where companies have passed at 0.5 and failed at 5 micron. In every single incident that we've dove into, we've found something wrong. Shedding garments, residue, breakdown of equipment, improper cleaning. This is why I'm a big advocate myself personally of unidirectional airflow is critical in the 21st century, because all these other things can break down, but by delivering unidirectional airflow over critical surfaces, we have an extra layer of protection.
Well, and I think to Hasim's point, if you are providing product into the EU, you've got to meet the EU requirements, whether the FDA says 5 microns is important or not. Right. And Morgan, your earlier point was exactly right. All these regulations are minimum requirements. They are like taking your driver's test, right? Passing the driver's test is a minimum demonstration of ability. It doesn't necessarily make you a great driver. And what we want when we're manufacturing pharmaceuticals is we want everyone to be great drivers. And so if all you're doing is following the regulations, you are in all likelihood not going to have a great process and great process control as a result. I mean, the minimum puts you right on the fine edge of failure. And what you want a buffer that keeps you well away from that fine edge of failure. So,
hey, Dave, that's a great example. I mean, you could also equate that to pharmaceutical companies running ISO 7, but they're doing it sterile like an ISO 5, right? I mean, there's that over. You don't need to be just at a minimum, right? You want to be above that quality.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And I think that's true of any regulation, right? Whether it's Annex 1 or FDA GMP or USP 1072, regardless of what it is, right? You want to be well beyond or well away from the minimum regulatory requirements.
Right. And I think some of the stuff that's spelled out when it comes to the monitoring 5 micron monitoring or classification, Just to extend that, there's a clarification document from PICS related to 5-micron sampling and tubing lengths and stuff like that, where it makes it really clear, inspectors want short lengths of tubing for doing certification. They spell that out in the clarification document, preferably no lengths of tubing. And that gets carried, and that's officially released as of 2009. And talking about particle monitoring, yeah, Annex 1 goes out a little bit further and adds things like bend radius and stuff like that, which is all, we should be looking at and understand how that works. So I think it's really good information. Again, the whole point, the thing about minimum requirements, I say this a lot. So when we talk about minimum requirements, go to the most significant person in your life, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your children, and say, baby, what are the minimum requirements I need to stay in this relationship? Does that mean on your birthday I've got to buy you flowers, or chocolate, or does a pack of smoke and a drink work?
Yeah, what's the least I have to do to keep you with me?
Right.
Ouch.
Hey, guys, thanks.
I tried that. Doesn't work.
But I mean, but one thing, and also it's exceptionally important, right? I mean, what we're talking about, there are so many moving parts to make drugs sterile, right? So many moving parts, and you can have slip ups. It can be your operator's attitude. It could be you get a garment that's been laundered too many times. And important to understand that also within the manufacturing process, we generate contamination, right? Contamination's inherent in the process. And just because you have an isolator, and that's a big discussion I have quite a bit. Like, just because you have an isolator doesn't mean you're free from contamination. You're free from maybe external contamination. But that said, the process itself, the walking beam, the filling process, all generates contamination that can get back in the product. And that's why all these controls have to work.
And I think that's really in Annex 1, I think that's one of the benefits of what Annex 1, the draft anyway, clearly stipulates is the contamination control strategy, right? Or commonly called the CCS. Because this contamination control strategy says, this is all well and good, each one of these parts is important, but how they interrelate overall to achieve the contamination control that you need for your product and for your process is really what's key. Right. So while the guidance may say this, your contamination control strategy may dictate something different for very good reasons. Right. And you can use your contamination control strategy, this holistic approach to contamination control, to maybe do things that are slightly different than what the regulation says, but for your process, for your operations, for your facility, it's appropriate as long as you can validate that it's effective and your risk management analysis proves that it's doing what you want it to do. And I think that's an important part of the contamination control strategy. But it's funny that, you're looking at the CCS within Annex 1, and it's no different than what I have been telling our customers over the past 40 years is, all these separate parts, these moving parts are part of your process, right? The clean room's part of your process. The gowning is part of your process. And all of these things have to work together so that you have stepwise improvement in contamination until you get to the most critical part of your process. And that's no different than what a CCS is, right, in general. And I think that's one of the things that is beneficial with Annex 1 and the draft revisions is it kind of lays that out in a more thoughtful, clearer way than I think a lot of regulations have in the past.
One other thing important, one thing I like in the draft version, particularly in the scope, the annex is related to sterile products, but it also extends to non-sterile products and other medicinal products as well. And it tells us that, things such as contamination control strategy, clean room classification, qualification, monitoring, personnel gowning, even for products that aren't intended to be sterile, it should extend to that. And in Europe currently, so they apply Annex 1 from API all the way through compounding, sterile compounding to the patient. And I think that, and I think that's wonderful. It's one of the weaknesses I think in the U.S. is our sterile compounding industry is lacking in different terminology as well as guidances and things like that. Where at least in Europe they apply it all the way to the patient. And I think there's lessons to be learned in there. And also, I'm sure there's probably some negatives to that as well. But it's an important consideration. And also, they apply it even to medical devices to a certain extent in terms of having the classification and gowning, how you handle gowning.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think, you know, from our perspective, and you know, this holds for you, Jay and Leo both, when it comes to cleaning and disinfection, right? Annex 1 and the draft specifically clearly differentiate between cleaning and disinfection. And that's something that we've spoken about for I don't know how many years, you know, and FDA and TR70 and whatnot, USP 1072, they speak kind of in general roundabout terms about applying disinfectants to clean surfaces, right? How soil can affect the efficacy of disinfectant solutions and whatnot. And Annex 1 more clearly breaks that out and says, look, you know, cleaning and disinfection are two distinctly different things. And part of that cleaning involves removing the residues from the disinfectants that you're using or the cleaners that you're using, whatever it happens to be. And I think to a large extent, that's going to lead to just overall greater control, right? Microbial control within the clean room, but also too, and I think people don't appreciate how much that's going to lead to a much cleaner looking and a much cleaner operating facility, right? When you don't have floors that are slippery because of disinfectant layers that have been put down for the past 6 months, you know, when you have to remove those before you put more on, at least in some way, shape, or form, you're going to have a cleaner looking facility that people are going to be safer working in. So I think, you know, there's a lot to like in the upcoming drafts.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Dave.
Yeah, Dave, this is Jim. I totally agree with that. I think that the new draft Annex 1 is going to have a couple of really helpful sections where it talks about things like kind of Morgan was getting into pass-through decon. So when it comes to cell and gene therapy, compounding pharmacies, I think you're going to see that as a key section. Cleaning of RABs and how to make sure that any residue left behind in the RABs does not impede or negatively impact your disinfection of the RABs. And then, as you said, one key step that's mentioned in the new Annex 1 will be targeting residues and making sure that residues from disinfectants are removed. And a lot of things that helps with would be safety. So making sure floors aren't sticky, tacky, or slippery. Making sure that it's not a big aesthetic issue so that when you walk in the room is totally discolored by the buildup of residue over time. So I think that that's a key thing. Another key thing that you mentioned is making sure that you have something that's doing some cleaning in the room, because I still run into a lot of, and I think Morgan hears this, compounding pharmacies where one of the key products they use is just 70% IPA. And they think that isopropanol kills everything and cleans everything. And the real answer to that is not really. So I think you're going to see some key things brought up and mentioned in Annex 1 that is going to be expected, even the aspect of validation. So it does talk in there about the need to make sure that the products you're using in your cleaning and disinfection regime actually work, and to have, there's two aspects of validation that it mentions. One is the laboratory testing. So for example, coupon testing, suspension studies, and then of course, field trials. So doing some, real life trials, such as maybe during a power outage, construction event, or shutdown, and with respect to that, doing this triple cleaning and generating some monitoring data to go along with that.
Yep. Well, and also too, right, in Annex 1, I think they put, the draft version that is likely to be adopted. So let's clarify that. I think they're also putting emphasis on disinfectants and the method in which they're applied, right? So it's not just the matter of qualifying your disinfectant efficacy on surfaces, however you want to apply it, but actually in the way in which you're physically applying it in your specific facility. And I think that's huge as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It does mention that in the validation section. So, I mean, and Morgan, you can comment on this, but the whole inclusive section on contamination control strategies, that covers everything from endotoxin to not just cleaning and disinfection, but even the act of doing the aseptic processing in the room.
Absolutely. And just to build on what Jim said regarding contamination control strategies, IEST, we'll be starting a very comprehensive series of training courses related to contamination control strategies starting next month, in which Jim's a part of that, myself is a part of it, a few other people, where instead of, there's a lot of companies that there's a lot of training and webinars related to contamination control strategy, but IEST, we've brought together a whole group of experts, and we'll be breaking it down over a multiple week ongoing series, specifically looking at very specific aspects of the contamination control strategy. And we'll be leaning on experts like, Jim, Ziva, a few other people, sterilization experts, to cover the different aspects of the contamination control strategy. Not simply going through what should be in there, but also being able to talk about key points, key takeaways, and hopefully tell some stories where companies have gotten some of this stuff wrong. Some things like, sterilization, their approach to sterilization or facility design, to really give people a good sense, not just what a CCS should be, but also what are we actually talking about. But I think that's going to be very important, and IEST is going to be starting that next month as well.
And I think that one of the challenges the end users are going to face with Annex 1, the revision, is the whole, which can be relatively costly, is the whole documentation with their contamination control strategy, right? I mean, it's one thing to have SOPs written for certain procedures and protocols, right, to meet the needs of your facility today, but to actually have to go through and document how it's all interrelated and how it's all validated, I think that's going to be a big part of the challenge of looking into adoption of the revised Annex 1.
Absolutely. And one thing, when people say, again, the document's not published, it's not published, should we start acting on it now? And the question is, again, it should be a good reference for us. And one thing that any company should start looking at is starting a contamination control strategy. There's nothing magic about it. The components that are in it shouldn't change at all in the coming revision, but it's because it's such a massive undertaking. And the document, again, it's a broad document that's going to cover documents you already should have, and making sure you have the interlink, and again, the holistic approach. One aspect about Annex 1 is it really stresses the holistic approach to contamination control. And this is I think really important, something that I see where the people cleaning the clean room aren't at all engaged in the actual process. I'm gonna tell you a story. I was in a sterile suite in South Korea during COVID, and we were set up. We were simulating sterile septic operations. Everyone's gowned up. People are set. And because of delays in terms of getting stuff set up, we went past 5 o'clock. Well, at 5:05 every day, a janitor comes into the room and starts mopping. And we have the isolator open, we're in there working, simulating loading, something like a stopper bulb, very, very critical operation here that we're simulating with cameras and all this. And a guy comes in with a bucket and a bottle of Spore Cleanse and starts pouring the Spore Cleanse on the floor and mopping in the most terrible manner you can imagine to mop. And that created, that we captured on film, and that created a virtual storm of changes within that company in terms of people aren't interlinked. There's no holistic linked approach. I thought that might be a funny story to share.
Funny, frightening, take your pick.
Yeah. But again, other things, yeah, it's actually very frightening. And that brand new facility, and they had the floors had holes in it. and stuff like that. It's exceptionally important to have the holistic approach.
Yeah, one of the examples I've seen here recently that I know you guys are aware of is one of the sites that was working on manufacturing one of the COVID vaccines. They got a big 483 on them where the FDA regulator noticed that they're essentially taking big bags of waste in between different clean rooms, and there's some of it actually leaking in the rooms. Well, if you're watching the recent posts out in media, that actual facility recently lost their bid to make the vaccine because of all the issues that were going on with in relation to contamination control.
Yep.
That would be emergent. That would be emergent.
Wow, naming names. Yeah. Okay then.
Hey, that's all public information.
Yes, it is.
I haven't done any work with it, but I know people have, and but yeah, and it's important. I mean, the point being is that's one of the things that's great about the FDA, at least, is their warning letters are published, and quite often, you can find the 483s.
Yeah. Well, and it really speaks to these other issues, right? I mean, the holistic approach is, if you see, and we see this all the time when we go in and audit facilities, you see corners, right? The base of door frames, especially, right? When they're mopping, they don't pay a lot of attention to this little space down at the the base of the door frames and corners and all the places where you see soil and whatnot build up. And they're not cleaning it, and it just goes to show that a lot of these different operations within a clean room that are intended to provide this contamination control, overarching contamination control, miss the details. And if they're missing the details, they're not getting they don't have a clue about how it's all interrelated, right? And this is something that I hope just by having Annex 1 have this holistic approach with the CCS, if nothing else, I hope it gets people to thinking that, maybe these things should be tied together and interrelated, so we do have a better overall approach.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, just talking about, doors, right? Door sweeps, right? Anybody ever see a door sweep in a clean room? Shouldn't be there. Generally should not have a door sweep because that's where you're going to have a problem cleaning. And and especially not door sweeps where you have individual fibers, because some of those door sweeps still have horse hairs or plastic. They're impossible to clean and sanitize.
And one of the big problems with them I've seen, Morgan, is the rusting and pitting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that
absolutely.
a problem, Jim? Is that really a problem? Really?
Oh yeah, I've seen that on some of the like doors and underneath them. You'll see it, and then the rust gets all over the floor and stains it, bright red or dark red in color. And a lot of times they may think it's residue, and you look at the door and underneath it, and you see all that rusting going on.
See, we could have an entire 3-hour webinar just discussing the ills that we've seen in clean rooms throughout the world. Honest to Pete, I mean, it's amazing the variety of ways that people not find, because I don't think they do it necessarily intentionally, but the various ways in which a lot of these approaches and a lot of these operations are just so far away from good contamination control.
If everything was perfect, we wouldn't be in business, right?
Well, that's true.
Absolutely, Will.
Well,
one
of my favorite ones was before the pandemic. Right before it, I was down in Brazil, and I'm at this account in Rio, this pharmaceutical company, and the lady who's head of quality is telling me, well, Jim, we have a lot of mold problems here. And then she happened to mention to me that they open windows into the clean room.
Oh, Jesus.
And I thought, well, that could be a bit of a problem.
Oh, Lord.
So some of the things,
one of the best ones was I was called into a facility in the southeast, and they kept getting hits from a canine bioburden. So we take a look at the video overnight about 2:30 a.m. in the morning. The security guard gowns up and goes walking through the clean rooms with his German Shepherd. So then I thought, well, somebody ought to give Kimberly Clark a call and start to talk about gowning apparel.
Oh, good Lord, for dogs.
For the dog, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the guard was told to right walk the facility, right? So he's just doing what
And
he's
walk
told.
the dog.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, we laugh, but it's something that we do without thinking, right? The guard is doing his rounds like he's supposed to.
That's right.
We make the comment about it being in the clean room, but for him, that's what he's supposed to be doing.
That's right. This is one of the rooms.
So it's also emphasized, just to emphasize the point, this is why a overreaching document like a contamination and control strategy can be so important. Because, something like people may not think about, hey, no dogs in the clean room, right? But again, if it happened to your company or you're with a company, you might say, hey, look, we need to make this exceptionally clear. Why security going into the clean room, right? I mean, that's the, and again, the whole point in terms of Annex 1, it talks about that we should be using cameras, right? There should be no reason for security. And again, a clean room is by definition a controlled environment. One aspect of a controlled environment is access control. And again, like I said, we laugh about that. I've seen companies where they've made the mistake. They don't actually have access control into some of their areas. Logbooks are great, but I always have a question. Facilities. I spent a lot of time in Asia, and they have logbooks, paper logbooks, and to get into the aseptic core, you have to sign your name like 4 times in and out, and really an archaic method. But again, access control is so important.
I say, Hasim, do you have a comment to make?
I have a question regarding the clean room classification. The current version in GMP, especially for grade A, we all know that we need to sample 1,000 liters, 1 cubic meter of air, in order to have a better understanding about our clean room conditions. However, the current draft is now talking about having 0.5 micron only for classification, and there is nothing requested for 1 cubic meter of air sampling. Issue here is, if you have, let's say, 1 CFM device, only 1 minute sampling will be okay, and most of the job will be done by the statistical calculation. From my perspective, there is a huge risk because we will be moving the entire industry from 1 cubic meter of sampling, which is an exact amount of particles without any statistical calculation, versus sampling 28 liters and multiplying it with a certain number in order to guessing our conditions in clean room. Shall we cover this with contamination control strategy, or the industry will read the entire document and will apply 1 CFM device and they will be happy? So how do you see this?
I'll give you my opinion when I read the document. So I'll just talk about the document. So in the draft version of Annex 1, it says for clean room classification, the airborne particles equal to or greater than 0.5 and 5 microns should be measured, right? So that's for clean room. So any clean room, by definition, you should be looking at 0.5 and 5 micron. But you don't necessarily have a limit for grade A for 5 microns, but it's still a considered size. So that tells me, so when you look at ISO 14644 Part 1, 2015, or in previous version as well, right? Our minimum sample volume is determined by the largest considered particle size, right? So this automatically forces us to have for grade A, grade B, a much larger sample volume. So if we apply the adjusted limits of 29 to grade A for 5 micron particles, that would force you to have a sample volume of 690 liters, I believe, correct,
Morgan, the way you are considering it is quite professional, I should say. However, the table now for grade A in the new draft for classification is not giving any limits for 5 micron. I do respect what you said, And I completely agree with you. They should consider it, and they should make 20 divided by 20 with the previous limit, multiply by 1,000. So they should keep getting 1 cubic meter of air sampling. However, there's no limit, and the standard and the new draft says, okay, 0.5 micron would be enough, and if you want, you can add another particle size parallel to the new ISO 14644 Part 1 2015 edition, which is 1 micron. If I will consider 0.5 and 1 micron, then I should still get 24 liters, and still takes me to the root square number 1 and tells me to sample for 1 minute only with 1 CFM device. And we know that the industry is lazy. We know that people will read this document in order to, on their benefit, so to speak. So I still want them to have this clear sentence that they really want to see 5 micron and should define a limit, because they don't have to follow what the ISO says at the moment, and give them a limit, or at least make them sample 1 cubic meter of air. So this is what we expect from GMP. Otherwise, I'm sure everyone will think the way they want to, and will apply 24 liters, including 1 micron, or just a 1 minute sampling, including 0.5 only.
Yeah, I agree. This is a problem. But line number 424, section 4.29 says you should be doing 0.5 and 5 micron. So for all clean rooms, so that forces you to you need to do 5 micron, and you need, and here's the point, and here's one of the misinterpretations that's real common in the industry is you should still collect the 5 micron data for classification in your grade A. It doesn't mean you have to look at the limits, but how you're supposed to monitor both. You have to monitor both 0.5 and 5 micron. You're required to monitor. How can you possibly monitor a parameter that you don't use for the qualification? See, this is the biggest point. I'm qualifying a new isolator. If I don't look at 5 microns as part of the qualification, how can I possibly monitor it? And this stresses the importance of why in contamination control. Why do we look at 5 microns? We look at 5 microns because it helps us understand this stuff. But yeah, it is ambiguous. It is definitely ambiguous, but it's not. I mean, however, it says you should look at 0.5 and 5 micron. So if you take that approach, 5 micron is being the large considered particle size. And that should be how you determine what your minimum sample volume is.
Well,
would
you be able to justify looking at 5 micron even if the regulation doesn't require it, simply based on a risk management perspective?
Of course.
Right? I mean, that is the indicator for so many associated risks, especially with right operator behavior and people in the clean room. So one could say that, based on QRM, you have to look at 5 micron, whether regulatory says so or not.
I think absolutely. Again, the whole point is when we do clean room classification testing, right? The purpose of the clean room classification testing isn't to pass the test; it's to acquire the data, and then whether we pass or fail. If we obviously we fail, we have to fix something or address it. But that data should also be used in the classification to support our environmental monitoring. And this is one thing that is spelled out in the current version, the 2008 version. And I think it's expanded upon in the 2012 draft. But again, the point is, yeah, if you don't use something to qualify, how can you possibly monitor? And this is why we need to look at our data historically, again, the holistic approach. But yeah, Hasim raises an excellent point. Again, it's one of the ambiguities in the draft version. It's not very ambiguous in the current version, in the release version. It tells you have to sample 1 cubic meter of air.
Yeah. One point here. I don't agree that we should have a qualification of any size when we are using it for monitoring. The reason is monitoring has its own aspects, and we have a risk-based study in order to define locations rather than having table A1 to select how many locations we should pick. So I don't have to make any qualification or the size verification in order to select 0.5 and 5 micron together. However, I'm completely agree with all the subject matter experts here that we should have 0.5 and 5 micron both for classification and monitoring, no matter what the grade is our clean room. Reason I'm saying all these examples, the document is not clear and not giving any limits. So without having a limit, we shouldn't expect the industry to be wise enough to put their own limits or pick the previous one as a 20 particles per meter cube and monitor their clean room, as well as use the same size for classification and do the 1 cubic meter of sampling. So I know, I'm 100% sure that the lazy industry application will just pick 0.5 and 1 micron for classification, while they are using 0.5 and 5 micron. So our flow rate, the volume that we are sampling will dramatically change, and it will give another risk level. I agree with Dave. They all should be based on risk assessment. However, in real life, I'm not really seeing that the people understands the risk in a clean room related to channel sizes as well as the limit that they are sampling. If this was the case, we should expect them to have more feedbacks to the GMP when they are checking with the stakeholders. However, a few feedbacks, like we gave one feedback from IEEE, and we said that, okay, this has to be clarified because industry may misread the entire document and will not be able to guide themselves. So the problem here is there is still unknowns in this document, especially when it comes to the classification part. And if it will be the final document, I'm sure that will be misleading for most of the industry professionals.
Well, Asim, I think that's a great point, right? Because people will do the least amount of work they can, and I think you're by and large right that people are not as diligent as we might like them to be. So maybe there's a good opportunity for industry leadership, right, to do education on the common specific risks in a clean room, right? So that someone's looking to do their qualification, they can look at this sort of list that says, oh, okay, this is something I need to pay attention to, because a lot of them may not know, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, true.
Well, that's a good point, or an opportunity maybe for a recommended practice or a technical document on this.
Ooh, an RP on identified common specific risks in contamination control. I like it. I like it.
Yes,
Or
exactly.
an
That's a
RP
great
on
idea.
classification testing of a pharmaceutical clean room, what sizes and how you do it. Because the problem is people are going to start using handheld particle counters to classify their grade A and grade B rooms.
Yeah, they are.
And the problem is the sample volume is too small, and this is problematic.
Yep.
A case history. So in 2015 or 2016, there was a medical device company making products in Tijuana, Mexico, and they were doing a drug device combination product. So actually, aseptically filling an injector. And when the new version of Part 1 came out, they immediately stopped looking at 5 micron particles. Well, the problem was this is a facility that had a history of fungal contamination. In fact, going on site, we started looking at the data, and their 5 micron data would show that they were having a lot of 5 micron particles, particularly after it rained. And they admitted to me that every time it rained, it didn't rain very often, but when it did rain, they had to put buckets up in the facility, sometimes in the clean room. And days later, they had this increase in 5 micron particles. They thought they were off the draft, but they continued to have fungal contamination problem. So just, yes, people will take the least path of resistance.
So
sorry, we're coming onto our hour. I know you guys could probably talk about this for multiple hours.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Heather, no, I just want to say, right, I mean, Jay and Leo and Jim and Keith and Arlene, are there any last questions you might have? I don't want to leave anything unsaid or unasked.
Dave, I think we hit a lot of them. I think
We
it was
did.
a very good discussion.
We did hit a lot.
Yeah, good discussion,
Worthwhile
guys.
to you guys.
Appreciate
Was it useful?
I
For
thought
sure
it was.
useful. Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, I mean, on the cleaning and disinfecting side, obviously, we're seeing references to the annex and our customers already on all the things that were mentioned. I think those things, even though the document is not published, is not going away. You know, there's a lot of arguments around that. So all the extra things that got added, I think are already being seen, you know, by our customers.
Yeah, I think the direction of the document is unlikely to change upon final release.
Well, I want to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Morgan, Dave, and Jim for all your input and everyone else's comments and questions today. If there isn't anything else, we'll go ahead and end, and everyone have a good rest of their day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for
Thanksgiving, everyone.
coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Haseen,
Bye.
for joining. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
Morgan. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.
Good stuff. Thank you.